Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for joining. Welcome to Vivid Care webinar, Understanding Multiple Sclerosis. So we're pleased to have with us today Chris Marshall from VELA. The VELA chair's made over in Scandinavia, in Denmark. He's the country manager. And then we're also very pleased to have Patrick Burke with us. He lives with MS and is an active campaigner for multiple sclerosis. Welcome, Chris and Patrick. So I thought just before we get started on the webinar, I'll just go through a few of the little bit more about us. I'll just pull up these slides. Sorry, bear with me. There we go. So we recently celebrated our 50-year birthday, which was a fantastic event. Those of us, you may know us before as Yorkshire Care Equipment, so we've recently just rebranded to Vivid Care. So our mission is to enhance quality of life. So it really, I guess, would resonate with yourselves in the care industry as to exactly what you do day to day. So we've been dealing with healthcare professionals for a long time now, and dealt with many thousands, and really we specialise in the seating equipment, falls protection, rehabilitation equipment, which we're going to come on to, and the mobility equipment. These are just a selection of some of the chairs which multiple sclerosis sufferers benefit from. So we've got the Lento range of seating there. So the bariatric rise and recline over on the left. This is a multiple adjustable chair. So in terms of the width and the depth, arm height, back height, etc. Our most recent chair to the range is a Lento mobile rise and recliner compatible with an Argio Steady. And then we've got the Razor 2 emergency lifting chair, which is a very useful piece of kit which can be used by one carer to raise somebody up from the floor. And then of course the VELA activity chair, which we're going to come on to in a little bit more detail later. So with that, I welcome Chris and welcome Patrick. I believe Patrick's going to take us through a few slides now, so I'll hand over to you. Thanks so much.
Hello. Just a moment. Right. Hello, Harrogate, and good afternoon. I'm Patrick, 68 years old and suffer from advanced multiple sclerosis. I'm going to tell you how the disease affects me and how I cope. I'm now disabled, but I've learned to live with the disease. It has been a long and gradual process. It only really started to seriously affect me 20 years ago. I live close to London, where there are many medical specialists who help me in a huge number of ways. Also close to me is the Children's MS Therapy Centre, which is a hidden gem. And of course, I must thank Chris Marshall from VELA. So move on to the next slide, please. This is a picture of me taken 18 months ago, training to walk for a 1 hour sponsored walk. I succeeded in walking 1K in that time, 1 kilometre, and raised over £6,000 for the Children's MS Therapy Centre. As you can see, I'm having to use a four-wheeled walker to walk the distance. Now, I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS, or early stage MS, in 1996. In 2000, my diagnosis moved forward to secondary progressive MS. Now, looking back, I'm certain my MS started in the early 70s while I was still at school. In fact, I was in a pub with a couple of friends, just starting my second pint of beer, when I suddenly had an incredibly strong urge to go to the loo and have a pee. It was not a case of, I think I will need to go to the loo quite soon. It was now or I will pee in my pants. I rushed to the loo. When I got there to have a pee, nothing happened. Urge to have a pee gone completely. Nothing happened. It never crossed my mind to see a doctor about this. I did have 2 more terrible relapses with my bladder during the 70s. But I could always find a reason to explain it away. Flu, problems with my little business, and stress. After the 70s, the issue quietly rumbled along until about 2005. I was diagnosed with MS because of double vision in 1996. This occurred when I was driving. This was yet another problem that came and immediately went away. But it really did happen. I really had double vision. My brother then suggested I ought to see my GP. She referred me to a consultant that specializes in MS, and he diagnosed me with relapsing remitting MS very quickly. In fact, within 6 months. Now, advanced MS, or secondary progressive, started in about 2000. But I continued working as a contract computer analyst programmer for banks. Very slowly, everything steadily got worse and worse. But I was in denial. I couldn't afford to let people know I had multiple sclerosis. Eventually, medical retirement grabbed me in 2012. Now my life is full of challenges, such as putting on a coat, or organising a trip into London by train. There are numerous other problems in my life that would not even cross my mind. Some serious, some trivial, that I live on. Can we have the next slide, please? Physical disabilities. These are usually very visible. In 2010, I could not walk more than about 1 kilometre, but I didn't need a cane. I could just walk along quite happily, but only about 1 kilometre. These days, I cannot walk unaided, and I have had to use these aids to help me since about 2013. People can see that I have a disability. Now I suffer from chronic foot drop and leg drop in my left leg. My sense of balance has been poor for many years. Now it is truly dreadful. If I close my eyes, I will fall over. As simple as that. I need to be able to see a horizon. In fact, today, even if I'm holding on to something, like a chest of drawers or a table or the back of a chair, I cannot stand for more than 2 or 3 minutes. Indoors, I use a 4-wheeled walker. Outdoors, I use a 3-wheeled mobility scooter. I use it in town to go shopping. It is very light and uses a lithium-ion battery, and it can be folded up to go into the boot of a car. The really good thing about it is that it does not make me feel disabled. I think that's something that's really important to people who have got a disability like myself, multiple sclerosis. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Invisible mental disabilities. If I Google mental disabilities, I'm told they are clinically significant disturbances in an individual's cognition, emotional regulation, or behavior. They are usually associated with distress or impairment in important areas of functioning. Bit of a mouthful. Let's step back a bit. Diagnosis of MS is a traumatic event. Imagine being told in your 20s that you have a life-changing, incurable disease. Dr. Google is full of bad news. You might become wheelchair bound, not be able to walk up a flight of stairs, or suffer from terrible fatigue. You may even become incontinent. If diagnosed today, that really is unlikely to happen because the drugs are so good. But I was diagnosed in the 1990s and there was nothing available to help me. A classic scenario was for a woman to get married. This was last in the 20th century and even up to about 2010. A woman could get married, become a mother, and a few years later, she's diagnosed with MS. A common symptom of MS is sexual dysfunction. And sex really is the glue that holds many a marriage together. Is it any wonder that so many marriages where one of the partners suffers from MS breaks down? I was not diagnosed until I was over 40 and maintained a normal life for another 10 years. 27 years after diagnosis, I'm still happily married with a very understanding family. Now, I skated over many of the issues. Hidden disabilities can often only be seen by people who know me really well. But mental problems can occur because your contemporaries were able to do things that you cannot because of MS and the impact this is having on your life. Now, add problems such as losing cognition, poor memory, and double vision. And it's no surprise that people with MS get depressed and disillusioned. Now, take this. It takes me an hour every morning just to get out of bed, washed and dressed. And this I must do sitting down on the bed. I expect almost all of you can get dressed standing up. Never consider sitting down. Just one day, try getting dressed sitting down and see how long it takes and the frustration. It is impossible to visualize the emotional damage these problems cause, but trust me, they hurt. The ability to be positive is very important. Don't forget that your social circle or world shrinks as you get older and more disabled. What was once accessible could now be totally inaccessible. Think of restaurants. Lou is always downstairs. Public transport, driving, and so many shops have steps. New treatments for MS have totally changed the outcomes for people who are now diagnosed. What I have previously described may well never happen to them. Can we have the new slide, please? Symptom management drugs. Multiple sclerosis is a one-way moving feast. Certainly for people who are diagnosed more than 10 years ago. At some point, the diagnosis of MS will change from relapsing remitting to secondary progressive. There is no going back to relapsing remitting because the way MS affects the nerves, it has changed. With secondary progressive, remission will stop. Instead, the symptoms will gradually get worse and worse. This is known as smoldering MS. Even worse, the medical landscape changes completely. The only prescription drugs available to me now are symptom management. Yes, they make my life easier, but there's always a payoff. A drug might ease bladder problems, but then it makes me constipated. Some can be addictive or make you drowsy or reduce cognition. It might even become ineffective. There is no such thing as a free dinner with multiple sclerosis. Maybe the time has arrived when you must start to think of adaptations to the house. Grab rails, wet room, wheel walker in the house, and a mobility scooter for getting around outside. The chances are you've also had to take medical retirement. Next slide, please. Cannabis. Some of you will be described to hear that I admit to taking cannabis. Actually, I have a private prescription for what's called a synthetic cannabinoid. And I don't buy a bag of weed from the local street corner. Not that I could buy it in this town, but never mind. Officially, I am prescribed medical cannabis to reduce pain and neuropathic pain. It has been very effective in eliminating pain, which is a common MS symptom, but it has many other benefits as well. MS can affect a person's bowels, and it is not in a good way. I was starting to suffer from incontinence. Poor control of bowels was starting to have a serious impact on my quality of life. And to make it worse, people are very reluctant to discuss poo problems. Right now, 8 months after starting taking cannabis, my bowels are not perfect, but they're much, much better. And life has become manageable. The improvement began as soon as I started taking the medical cannabis. Many people with MS suffer bladder problems. I won't go into details except to say that I am one of those people, and it can be highly embarrassing. I have a Botox injection into my bladder wall every 3 to 4 months, and that does improve my life. It relaxes the bladder walls. And cannabis makes that problem even easier to live with. Other benefits include better sleep, feeling less stressed, and more relaxed. My quality of life is so much better. Equally important, so far, there are no downsides. I only take it in the evening and when I go to bed. It costs me less than £25 a week, and the elephant in the room is now much smaller. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Medical retirement. Retirement sounds appealing to many of you, but medical retirement is a very different kettle of fish. Medical retirement implies that you are no longer capable of doing any sort of paid work. So you must leave your job, but you lose so much more. The chats over the water fountain, people asking you for your opinion. Respect, trust, and friendship also take a hit. Dig a bit deeper, and maybe you are no longer using your brain or being challenged mentally. Suddenly removing a massive chunk of your life can affect you both physically and mentally. And it is only too easy to lose contact with your colleagues. I used to be a contract computer analyst programmer and worked all over the world. Medical retirement devastated me. Suddenly going from full-time work to 0 hours. I was only 58. It was not only the loss of a salary that affected my life, but the contributions to my private pension really hurt me now that I'm retired. Sadly, employers have a mental image that disabled people cannot work. I think that is slowly changing, but it needs to happen more quickly. Employment is really important in so many ways, as I said earlier. When I did take medical retirement, my biggest challenge was reinventing myself. I didn't want to sit around doing nothing. I had to identify my transferable skills. I discovered that I was able to educate other people on living with a long-term condition and how I cope. Strangely enough, the pandemic was a big help to me. So much more is now done virtually, and that suits me admirably. Can we go on to the next slide, please? King of the kitchen. I have always enjoyed cooking and shopping for food. My first serious girlfriend has always blamed my kebabs for her decision to marry me, and we're still married. A few years after medical retirement, it became progressively more difficult for me to stand on my feet to prepare food and cook. I just had to sit down. One of my favorite hobbies was being taken away from me by multiple sclerosis. I needed to find a good solution that worked for me and would not cost the earth. Next slide, please. Dangerous solutions. I wanted to continue my favorite hobby, but this was not going to be easy. Changing the kitchen was out of the question. An occupational therapist offered me a perching stool, but it did not take me long to realize that this was totally impractical. Could I get onto it and sit on it? No. I would have to move it if something was just out of reach. It really was totally useless for me and my needs, and would definitely go into room 101. Many dentists use a saddleback stool, shown on the right. It's on wheels, and the height of the saddle seat is easy to change. I splashed out some cash, bought one for about 160 quid. Basically, I had no complaints, but it did not properly tick any of the boxes very well either. Our kitchen floor is tiled, so there is grouting between the tiles, so the surface is not totally even. The small wheels of the saddleback stool can get trapped in the area between the tiles, and the stool topples over with me on it. This happened on more than one occasion, and I fell off. Luckily, only my pride was damaged. But this potential accident, not good in too many ways to mention. Imagine if I was carrying a cup of coffee and it spilt on me. I shudder. I could have been carrying a saucepan of hot water. This one I bought does not have a backrest. The one I bought, does not have a backrest. There's a potential danger for me as well. No brake and no armrests merely added to the danger. Could we have the next slide, please? A good solution. I'd known Chris Marshall for 2 or 3 years when he asked me to help out at an exhibition. And one of the chairs was a VELA chair. As soon as I sat on it, I just knew that it was exactly what I needed to use in the kitchen. Quite simply, it ticked all the boxes for me. Crucially, I felt 100% safe in it. I now use it at home in the kitchen. In fact, I could not survive without it. The following features sold it to me. It feels very stable, and therefore very safe. Very easy to change the height of the saddle seat. An adjustable backrest and armrests. The armrests make me feel safer and more secure. The large wheels do not get stuck in the grouting of our tiled kitchen floor. The wheelbase is in a fixed position relative to the seat. So you can't really tangle your feet up in the wheels. Now I can do everything in the kitchen and a bit more. I've been promoted to the chief bottle washer. Most important with the chair is I do not feel disabled. Now I can continue with my hobby, and I feel I'm helping the running of the house. Thanks to all of you for listening, and I will now hand you back to Chris.
Well, thank you very much, Patrick. It's the second time we've met, and just as enlightening as the first time. A lot to take in there in terms of your illness, and yeah, very enlightening, as I said. So I'll hand over to Chris now. Chris will take us through the chair.
Thank you very much, George, and thank you very much again, Patrick. Very informative. So, as the guy said earlier, I represent VELA, Danish company, established way back in 1935, based in northern Jutland, Denmark, a place called Aarhus. We design, manufacture, and distribute all over the world. And we're very lucky here in the UK to have Vivid Care, previously Yorkshire Care, as one of our distributors and partners. So today I'm here to discuss the VELA chair in two guises. We have the one that you see here with Patrick. This is the chair that he uses in and around his kitchen. This facilitates the easy rolling from kitchen sink to dining table to cooker, etc. And the key features on all of the VELA chairs are that they're set on 4 wheels, unlike the previous saddle chair that Patrick showed you. Obviously, the first problem with a 5-star base is that you have a trip hazard, which certainly hinders anybody getting in and out of the chair, whether it's with a walking stick, on a frame, or indeed a wheelchair. So we build our chairs on 4 wheels, set in the 4 corners, and that ensures that we've got stability on the chair, so we don't have the fear of the chair falling over should it hit an obstacle. As Patrick quite clearly said, and this is a huge benefit of the VELA chairs, is that we have larger 100mm casters on the chair, fully rotational, directional. But the key feature here, safety first. VELA is one of the key features for VELA is not only to promote independence, stay home, stay safe, stay independent, but it's prevention of trips and falls. And prevention of trips and falls leads very nicely into preserving energy, so that you've got more energy at the end of the day to spend it with your friends and family, perhaps enjoying the food that you've cooked, utilising your chair. So I will run through the VELA chair. This is the VELA Tango 700E. 4 wheels, 4 corners. Before we enter the chair, we don't want it to run away. This is the trips and falls that we're preventing. So we have a very conveniently placed brake. Here, you'll have an audio click that ensures that as you approach the chair, it's not going to run away. So we can safely ensure that you sit back into the chair. Incidentally, this is set up right-handed. If you undo the little screw at the back, it can very easily be a left-handed. And the new Tango 700 design ensures that we can go through nearly all doorways and even the smallest of kitchens, because we can angle the lever here. So forward, locked and safe. Push back, again, slight audio noise, and we can now utilise the function of the wheels in the corners. This is unique to the VELA frame here, that we can now walk the chair. So again, we're not got the fear of falling or tripping. We can go over to the dining table. We can do some food preparation safely. We can then take this over to perhaps the cooker. Now, this is the VELA Tango chair, or the VELA chair, I should say. This is the 700E. Now we have this. The E represents electric lift. So underneath here on the right-hand arm, again, can be left-handed. We have the facility to raise the chair. So Patrick's chair that he has at home is currently a manual chair, which is gas operated. What we're finding now with the new VELA chair is that people are actually future-proofing and looking to use the electrics because it offers slightly more functionality. We can still adopt the perching position, which Patrick has on his saddle chair. This will still allow us to walk, so the fear of perhaps spilling hot pans, hot water, as Patrick intimated there, we're removing that risk. And we can do this securely and stably, and we're not going to get the wheels stuck in the grout, in the tiles, flagstones, uneven floor. It's very stable to manoeuvre. Now we can do our food preparation, our independence, our life skills. We may even want to use it to go from kitchen, perhaps if you've got a through floor down to a kitchen, a bathroom area. So we can use this as a multiple tool for independence and mobility. By applying the brake here again for stability, rather than using lots of energy, which again said that we want to save to use with our friends and family, we can use the elevating function to get to a standing position where we may have a walker, we may be going toileting or perhaps into a wheelchair. We can leave that chair in this nice safe position with the brake on, and we can come and access according to the chair. Use the nice quiet low option. We do have the option to level the seat out, and then we can exit and perhaps go to our next task. So this is a very brief overview of the VELA chair available through Vivid Care, not only for individuals living with MS, but lots of other neurological conditions. And I'm sure George and his team will be more than happy to answer any questions. So that's me from VELA, and over to you.
Thank you, Chris. That was a great overview. And there's been quite a few questions which have come through. So I'll call on either yourself, Chris, or Patrick. So first one, Chris, for you, can the chair have a different seat, e.g. a flat seat?
Absolutely. So we can customize these chairs. This is currently set up with what we call our active seat. So this is a relatively flat seat and an active back. Incidentally, we do a contoured seat if we needed slightly more support through the thighs. This has a very slight pommel here, and the back has some winged sides. Should the individual have their own preferred cushion, such as a J cushion, something along those from a wheelchair, then we can strip the seat down over at the factory in Denmark, where we make every chair to each order, and we can then pop their preferred seating system onto the current frame.
That's fantastic, thank you. And one for you, Patrick, if that's okay. So how easy is it for you to put the brakes on and off the chair? I think you're unmuted now.
Right. Yeah, okay. It's really easy to release the brakes. It's just a matter of moving the lever. I got very good use of both arms, so I can really put the brake on and off. I can change the height very easily, so I can reach up to the top of the kitchen cupboards. I can get saucepans out of the bottom of the kitchen cupboard really easily. So from that point of view, there are no problems with it, which is one of the reasons why it ticked the boxes for me.
That's great, thank you, Patrick. Another one for you, Chris, option of lap belts.
Yeah, certainly. We have a whole host of possible supports. Yes, we do a 4-point lap belt, which is my preferred lap belt. If you're going to use one, get a proper one that's going to actually work. A lot of other solutions we can add are thigh guides. We do harnesses, we do laterals, we do headrests. But I'll be very, very honest with you. For the majority of individuals living with MS, Parkinson's, neurological conditions, the function of the braking system and the high-low and the stability of the wheels is the key. We're preventing the trips and falls. It's a safety element. However, if we wanted a belt, certainly we can add one. And incidentally, all of the accessories that we can assist with are all available to retrofit. So you may purchase the chair as it is, as standard, and then decide to put something on later, and it's all geared up to do so.
That's brilliant. That really answers a few other questions we've had. Can the seat have a long backrest, i.e. so the head and neck and head is supported?
Sure, absolutely. So this particular chair, and this is what we call our standard model, it comes with the active seat, active back in medium, both seat and back. We go down small, medium, large and extra large. And it is a case of, George, you may purchase the medium back and then decide, you know what, actually would like a higher back. So you don't have to go buying a whole new chair. You just phone you guys up and say, George, can I have the higher back, please? And that will just pop on there. Same with the seat, and all of this is toolless. So under here are 4 wing nuts. So if you decide that you actually want a longer seat for some reason, or indeed a shorter one, which has happened, then sometimes you don't need an engineer. It is literally 4 screws underneath wing nuts. So it's I suppose it's a bit like Lego from Denmark.
No, that's great. And then a mobility question here. So does it go easily over door thresholds? So
Yeah.
the person can go between rooms?
Absolutely. So the larger 100mm casters, they facilitate that. Also, they're rubberized, so we've got friction. So the chair's not going to slip when we do so. And we have clearance. You can possibly see that up here. We've got nice clearance under here. So as soon as you go over the threshold. Now, to start with, I tend to use the clients and we go backwards because it's slightly easier until we get to know the chair and your surroundings. But then, as you get more confident, you can pull yourself and indeed furniture crawl as well if that's necessary. But to answer the question, thresholds certainly not a problem.
Brilliant. And then in terms of materials, is the material wipeable?
So as standard, it's what we call a mainline truss fabric, which is around about 70% wool, the rest cotton. If you want the white down, then we do what we call a compound fabric, which is hospital, so you can actually clean it down with alcohol. So we use that on our medical division of chairs. If you don't want to go down that look, then you can buy covers, which are 4-way stretch covers, both for seat and back.
Fantastic. And another one here that we've had, do you have any experience of using this chair with people with ME or CFS?
Yes. Falling into all of those categories.
Sure.
Yeah.
And another question which I'll seek to answer, is it possible to assess with this chair in someone's home? So absolutely, we have our own assessors, equipment assessors, which under an obligation we can come out with the chairs for the patients to try and take it from there. So certainly please get in touch if you've got somebody specifically you may be thinking for, and we can bring the chairs along. Had a few questions in terms of price guide. In terms
Price
of
guide, anything from sort of like £900 or something like the saddle and stool. But again, what I'm finding, particularly over the past 2-3 years, is that people are actually preferring to spend that little bit more and future-proof and ensure that this chair is going to last. So typically this will last you 10 years, and we do have them older. So a starting price might be £2,500. It equates to around about £4.80 a week for your independence to stay home, to stay safe. So yes, it may be initial £2,500, but £4.80 a week for your own independence. I think that's.
and we've also worked, haven't we, Chris, with quite a lot of charitable organisations,
Of course.
even through the access to work and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
there's, there are resources available, aren't they? Even through social services and
Social services turn to us. There's lots of funding bodies out there, and perhaps get in touch with us afterwards.
Yeah.
And we can perhaps send something.
Yeah. Weight limit on the
24.5 stone on electric.
there is a bariatric version of plus size, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we go up to 300 kilos on our bariatric chair.
That's great. So we've had a few questions kind of in terms of weight limits and sizes. Please, reach out to us if we haven't specifically answered those questions. We've had a question as to the cushions. Do does it have pressure relief in it? Well, you've kind of already touched on it, Chris, in terms of the customization available, i.e. having a seat board with the patient's own.
Yeah.
In terms of the existing pressure relief, what would you?
So within here, what we can do if we've got those requirements is we can put extra phones or memory phones here where the the ischial tuberosities, the sitting bones will be placed, so we can build up phones in there. If we have issues with the coccyx, which are dipping or something like that, then we can remove parts. Essentially, it's customizable. Is the answer to that, yeah.
Lots of questions coming through, thank you. In terms of the lead time for manufacturing delivery?
From Denmark, Aalborg, I say 3 to 4, and then you're always happy when it comes in 2 to 3.
That's great. And then for those with limited arm movements, can the brakes be fitted to the front of the chair?
Okay, so we've got a few options here, George. I'll sit down in the chair to demonstrate it. So we've got issues with rotated cuff, shorter arms indeed, smaller limb. Then you've got multiple options. We can have extensions here on the bar. We can have a T-grip. We could in fact have a button here to have it electronically brake system. So the answer is yes.
Excellent, that's great. Question for you here, Patrick, if that's okay. Have you used yours on the carpet?
No, I haven't. But the only problem I can foresee is it'd be a little harder to move. I always keep it in the kitchen and use it on the tiled floor.
Yeah. Chris, you might be able to follow on that. Somebody's asked are the wheels good for carpenters as well as hardwood floor?
Ideally, we look for wooden floors, tiled, flat surfaces. For something like this that we've got in your showroom here, you can see it facilitates the movement. But obviously, when we're living with MS, neurological conditions, a carpet could actually be a hindrance because it can be considered as a trip hazard because slippers stick and you drag your feet and it can be a problem. So we are noticing that a lot more people now are actually removing carpets and putting solid woods or vinyls or something a lot easier to work with.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then what is a minimum compatible door width?
Well, the frame is 55 by 55, so about 60. 60 and you're going to go through and not going to elbows.
So 2 foot for those working in old
Thank
money. And we did just touch on earlier, Carmel, in relation to your question. Yes, we do have a bariatric model. Was that 300 kg?
Yeah, 3 kg.
Yeah, that's great. And the warranty on the chairs?
2 years.
That's great. And finally, any ability to add a foot plate for hemiplegic, non-functional lower leg?
Yes, we do. So you're probably wanting just one side. We can have like your swing away wheelchair leg rest, and then we do an elevated one as well. That's for something like a hemi. If we're going up and we're using this perhaps in a science lab, so perhaps if you go back to work and you're working at higher tables, science bench, that sort of thing, then we can have a footrest that's affixed under the chair and will support your feet as you elevate up. And then we can have another swing out footrest if we're using it to transfer somebody. So we've got all of those footrests covered.
I think really it's reinforced to me as we've gone along. Thank you everybody for all the questions there, but there's so many different kind of specifications available on the one base model, as Chris has touched on. So, you know, all the different postural supports and foot plates and so on. It really does make it a very adaptable chair, as Patrick has given testament to. So we'll just wrap up now, if that's okay. We really appreciate everybody who's come on the call today. We've had some great questions come through, and Patrick, it's been fantastic to hear your experiences again. So just before we close up, please feel free to jump onto our website. We've got lots of free resources on there. So in terms of a seating ebook, which covers a lot of principles of seating, different training videos, prescription forms, webinars that we've run in previous times. This information is all free, so please jump onto the site, download and use it. So again, just like to thank everybody. Particular thanks to Patrick for coming on, sharing your experiences. Thank you, Chris, for going over the chairs, and thank you to all who've joined today. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.